Shabbat Shalom, my friends. I'm so very pleased to welcome a significant number of new folks who have recently chosen to join our weekly conversation about the Torah. Not only do we welcome your eyes, but you are also warmly invited to add your voices to our conversation and then, hopefully, to hit share our conversation so that family, friends, and so forth can also participate. And please feel free to contact me at ravdavids, R-A-V-D-A-V-I-D-S, @gmail.com if you ever have any special questions about the text, what I had to say, and so forth. Our subject today launches the study of the fifth and final book of the Torah, the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy 1:1 and following. Deuteronomy, Deuteronomos, a repetition of the law, Mishnah, Torah. Deuteronomy contains a summary of the laws and teachings of Moses, but scholars tell us that Deuteronomy probably contains material several hundred years younger than much of what we had found in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. So there are changes here, sometimes subtle, sometimes far more complex. And there are new emphases in Deuteronomy and also some new language. Jerusalem, for example, unnamed, is clearly very important to the Deuteronomist. So are the sacrifices in the Beit Mikdash, the central sanctuary, the temple in Jerusalem. Blessings and curses abound. Blessings for those who follow the mitzvot, and of course curses as punishment for those of us who fall short. And as for language, the Deuteronomist will most often create a new combination of God's names from earlier names. God's name Adonai in some places, Elohim in some places in Deuteronomy, Adonai, Elohim, other changes as well. But before we move forward in our study, we need to recognize where, in fact, we are standing right now. Saturday evening, July 21st, is Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, the date that tradition has assigned to the destruction of the first temple and the second temple, to the expulsion from Spain in 1492, and to numerous other tragedies in our people's history. During this past week, observant Jews have refrained from eating meat, with Shabbat being the only exception. And Tisha B'Av itself is considered to be a 24-hour fast day. To add to the mystique, we always read this particular Sedra, Deuteronomy 1:1 and following, the first chapters of Deuteronomy on the Shabbat immediately preceding Tisha B'Av. So we read Deuteronomy 1, Saturday morning, Saturday evening, Tisha B'Av. And when we get in the reading Saturday morning to Deuteronomy 1:12, we're going to find the Hebrew word echa, the word that is, by the way, the very first word of the book of Lamentations. That's the connection. We chant that verse in the Torah, Deuteronomy 1:12, not with the Torah trope, but with the trope associated with the book of Lamentations, echa. Thus, for those who are her students, Torah enfolds us like an old friend. She keeps us anchored, even in the calendar, as she teaches us how to reach. Whether you fast or not, whether you sit cross-legged on the ground with flickering candles casting an uncertain light or not, whether you choose to hear the hauntingly unique chant of the book of Lamentations, Echa, or not, you might want to take some time this Saturday night and Sunday to contemplate, meditate, think about all that has been lost, the pain that was inflicted upon us all across the centuries, and what it means for us to be privileged to live where we live and how we live right now. Here, perhaps America, wherever you happen to be, but with a Jewish state, the third Jewish Commonwealth, in so many ways fulfilling a 2,000-year-old dream. We say Ashrenu. That word Ashrenu is often translated as happy are we, but it would be probably more accurate to read it as blessed are we. Ashrenu, blessed are we, even now on Tisha B'Av. Okay, the Sedra, we know, is called Devarim, words, because the text begins with the Hebrew phrase, Ele HaDevarim Asher Diber Moshe. These are the words that Moshe, spoke. By the way, on the last day of his life. The last 4 books of Torah overwhelmingly contain not the words of God, but the words of Moses. That's not the way that we usually think of things, but the rabbis are close to unanimous, that's a miracle, in believing that God's words and God's voice threatened to overwhelm, even to kill, the Israelites who were standing previously at Mount Sinai. The voice of God, God's voice, mipi hagvura, from the mouth of power, were too pure, too powerful, crushingly loud, frighteningly accompanied by a celestial sound and light show, thunder and lightning and blasts from heavenly shofars, and probably a few earthquakes thrown in as well. We are taught that as God began speaking with all of this at Sinai, the people fled backward and many even died on the spot. So God quickly changed the pattern of divine communication. God would speak to Moses, and then over the next 40 years, Moses would share with the people just what it was that God demanded, intended, threatened, exhorted. And so that's why Deuteronomy begins with Ele HaDvarim. These are Moses' words, not God's. Now, all that God could directly communicate with the people was the fact of God's existence. How does he do that? How does God do that? I am the eternal your God, ... You shall have no other gods before me. That's it. That's what was communicated directly to the people at Sinai. God says, I exist. I am God. The only God. Now, you have to figure out just what that startling reality means. Means to the world, means to humankind, means to the Jewish people, and most especially means to each and every one of us. From this perspective, revelation at Mount Sinai was not a one-shot intrusion into human history. What happened at Sinai was God's demanding our absolute attention. I exist, God said, not me, God. I exist. I alone govern the universe. Now, you have to figure out what to make out of that reality. Revelation then becomes an ongoing, continually evolving phenomenon. Not once and over, but ongoing. Moses had to use human words. The Hebrew is Lashon B'nai Adam, people talk, to communicate to us what he felt God was saying to him. After those 2 first commandments that God communicated to the whole Jewish people, all the other 611 commandments God commanded to Moses, but Moses had to put them into words. Human speech can never accurately, infallibly reflect the will of God, because human speech can only approximate, in Moses' case, what Moses heard from God. That means, in ways that, forgive me, are really difficult to grasp, that the full revelation of Torah is not complete. Not now, not ever. Each generation adds to Torah. Each generation suggests new ways to derive transformative meanings out of a 3,000-year-old text. Even saying it gives me goosebumps. 3,000. Each generation drills down into the text, mining for the rarest of metals, the most precious of teachings. Each generation finds discomfort with how its predecessors heard God's voice. Corrections are made. Nuances are grafted onto the Torah, and the process continues. But what? Hear me clearly. We don't change the actual words of Torah, not of the written Torah. Not a single letter will ever be changed, even when our most skilled scholars detect an actual error in the original Torah text. Torah is eternal. Torah is also eternally evolving. Picture the scene in which a sofer, a Torah scribe, comes to your community. You've participated in that. With quill and ink and infinite patience, he or she guides your hand, right? You are allowed, under very strict guidance, to hold that quill and to write a letter or a word. A truly sacred act. But as you write that letter, you are helping Torah to grow. Your choice to participate in a sacred act becomes part of the living Torah, growing in our hearts, in our minds, in our soul. We are helping Torah evolve. Torah grows when we reject ancient patterns of sexism. Torah grows when we find new ways to embrace the stranger, to care for the disadvantaged, to protect the environment, to open wide our doors to all of those who come seeking. Torah grows when we broaden our understanding as to who is the other in our society, and to learn to see in that other the actual face of God. Each of those acts helps Torah grow, a living Torah. Enough for today. Wow, that's good. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, welcome to our newcomers. Please remember, hit share so that your friends and family members can become a part of our community. My friends, have a beautiful Shabbat and a rich and a meaningful Tisha B'Av. Shalom.